Hello everybody, welcome to another video. My name is Infiniti and today I want to show you guys how to unravel a hank of yarn. So I know, at least for me, when I started knitting and crocheting, I would see these very pretty yarn bundle things on the shelf and I'd be kind of intimidated by them because I'm like, oh, that looks tangly. Well, today I'm going to revisit on how to unwind them and roll them into a ball so that you don't have to struggle with them and you don't have to be afraid of them anymore. So hanks are really interesting. They're just twisted loops of yarn basically, and you have to wind them into a ball before you start working with them. Otherwise you're going to have a tangled mess and you're going to hate hanks forever. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into this tutorial. So unwinding or unraveling a hank of yarn is really easy. Today I have this really beautiful hank of yarn from Darn Good Yarn. I have been planning a project with this, so I figured before I jumped into that project, why not use this as a really great example. So what you want to do first is remove the yarn tags. Some of them are hand tied and then some of them have like this little knob thing on them, so I just cut that off of there and set the label to the side. Then what you're going to want to do is just kind of find where this top loop is and tug on the bottom of it as to undo the twist, like the initial twist of it. And what you're going to want to do is just start to gently open it up so that you can form a loop. And probably the easiest way to do that is find where it was initially hung, where the tag was sticking out of, and just pull it apart from there so you don't tangle up your yarn. So now here I have this circle, and this is really nice because in the past hanks that I've worked with, the ties for the hanks were the same color as the yarn, so they were kind of interesting to find. But these are clearly a different color, so you just want to find these and you want to start untying them or unraveling them. And I say be careful with this because you can go through and cut them, but you want to make sure that you're not cutting up the actual yarn that you'll be working with. A lot of the manufacturers of yarn hanks will make them easy enough to just untie them by hand. I just did my nails, so it's a little tricky for me right now, but if you have longer nails, it's of course easier to pick apart those knots. And you just want to take these little ties off of there. You can throw them to the side or you can throw them away, it doesn't really matter. And there will always be one of these that will have yarn that is actually going to be the working yarn of the hank, so you want to be keeping an eye out for that one. Now see, I can see that this is not one of those, so I'm just going to cut it. And I'm going to assume, because this is the last one over here, that it is my one where I'll be finding my end pieces. And as you can see, they kind of intertwine those end strings into this one. So I'm going to just particularly cut the white string just to not chop up my yarn. Alright, and this is really handy, like I said. Usually one of the ties will lead into the actual hank of the yarn, or round, whatever you want to call it at this point. So I'm going to cut them at the very ends so that I have two independent strands of yarn here. And what you're going to do is just pick one, really, and you're going to start rolling it into a ball. So in order to roll it into a ball, usually you take one end of the yarn and you lay it over two fingers. And you just start wrapping the yarn gently around your fingers. Not enough to cut off your circulation, but enough to just get things rolling, if you will. No pun intended. And you're going to want to wind the hank into a ball because they get tangly. And as you roll, you're going to probably run into some spots where you have to untangle the yarn. So you're just going to untangle as you go. And I know this all sounds complicated just to use like one thing of yarn, but it's really well worth it, especially once you get into your project. You don't want to have to constantly deal with the unrolling and all that. And if you're concerned about your yarn rolling all over the floor, I understand. I always have like some kind of basket or tub next to one of my desks or tables where I can just drop the ball of yarn into and it can roll around in there. The one by my desk I got from, I think I got it from a Dollar Tree once, or a Michael's or something. And the one by my table I know I got from Joann's because they were having a sale at the end of the year on their baskets, and I love baskets. So a little bit about me. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep rolling my ball and untangling my yarn. And also different weights of yarn, they will unravel differently. The last video that I did with one of those huge hanks of roving yarn, and it wasn't as catchy or really as tangly. You want to make sure you keep a clear center when you're doing this, as you can see my yarn is kind of collecting in the center. You just want to make sure that you're not tangling up your yarn. And one trick that I use sometimes when I'm dealing with these hanks is that I find a stitch marker and I make sure that the opposite end I put a slip knot in there. Just like that. And I just slip a stitch marker on there so he doesn't get lost, because it's very easy to lose him during this process. And this yarn catches just a little bit when you wind it because it has tinsel in it, and tinsel likes to cling to tinsel, I've noticed over the years. So yeah, you just want to take your time and go through this. You can wrap, or you can lay rather the ring around a chair and kind of unravel it that way. There's a lot of different ways you can go about this. But anyway, I'm going to meet you guys back when I get through this hank and I have a nice little shiny ball. Something I wanted to bring up is, like, if you start winding up one end of your hank and it starts to tangle, don't freak out. You can just take that other end that we put the stitch marker on earlier and you can start rolling it from there. I already have a decent sized ball on that, and I've had no issues with tangles, and so you don't have to worry about it really tangling again until you get to the other end. Like I said, you want to keep your eye on how the yarn is behaving as you get to winding. So put on some music and sit back and just keep winding. Alright, so as you can see, I have my little ball here all wound up and it's ready for use whenever I get ready to do my project. I was thinking that with this, because this colorway is called Sandy Beach, I am going to use this for a fishnet shawl. So if you want to keep up with that progress, you can follow me over on Instagram, or keep up with the blog on my website where I post my whips. This particular yarn is a lace weight. It's a silk yarn and it's by Darn Good Yarn. I've had it for a little bit, and so I was just trying to figure out how I wanted to stash bust it, so I figured this was like the perfect thing to do with it. I'll leave the link to this yarn down in the description box below, so if you want to check that yarn out, you can. And until next time, guys, happy making!